Hey guys, real quick shout out to our buddies over at Buzzard Roost Saddles. Buzzard Roost Saddles was born in the swamps of Santa Maria, South Louisiana, and their purpose is to get you standing over your next carcass so you can pick them clean. I'm excited to be able to now offer you a 10% discount on Buzzard Roost Saddle hunting gear. If you're looking to get into the saddle hunting game or are looking to change your current saddle setup, be sure to check out Buzzard Roost Saddles. Use code HTWPC10 at buzzardroostsaddles.com to save 10% today. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Adam Bowlds. Today, I'm going to be talking, or we're going to be listening to AJ Hunter of Huntlyte answer a few questions about saddle hunting. We're going to do kind of a saddle hunting 101 thing here. Some of you, this may not be relevant to you. Maybe you've been saddle hunting for a while, and some of this stuff might be a little beginner for you, but there's a lot of people out there that probably don't know a whole lot about saddle hunting, and we've talked about it on the show before. So I just want to fill everybody in exactly, gives kind of some of the specifics and how much money it costs to get involved in it and the kind of gear you need. So we'll bring in AJ now, and we'll have him introduce and tell a little bit about himself, and we'll jump into some questions. So AJ, thanks for coming on, taking the time to join me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Adam. I'm AJ Hunter. I'm the owner of Huntlyte. I'm a mountain guide and veteran as well.
Yeah, you're man. I had talked to you at the Mobile Hunter Expo in Ohio, and I had completely forgotten that you were a mountain guide. So in my questions, I didn't really, I had my questions written up prior to this, kind of help me stay on track. But we may have to get into some of that too, because that stuff is interesting, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what influenced a lot of the design of my products and kind of what led me into the saddle hunting realm in general was kind of coming from that transition from the mountain guiding side of things, as opposed to what I think a lot of people do, which is starting hunting first, or they're arborists, and that's how they've kind of gotten into it.
Yeah, that's man. I bet you've seen some stuff being a mountain guide.
Just a little bit. I've been places.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get too in depth with it, I guess we'll start with how you got started hunting and getting involved. I guess, well, I usually say getting involved in hunting and the outdoors, but you were involved in the outdoors prior to. But I want to know how you got started in hunting.
Okay, yeah. So with just hunting, honestly, it was, you know, I would say for the most part it was COVID, but I have to backtrack a few years prior to that. When I was in college, after I got out of the service, I had a friend who I met at the farmer's market, and he's like, "Oh, dude, you should get into hunting." I'm like, all right, cool, I'll try it out. So I bought some of the camo from Walmart, and he's like, "Here, take this tree stand, go out there, take your recurve, and go and sit in the woods." And I didn't want to be out there at sunrise or sunset, the prime time for hunting. So I was out there from like, I think 1 to 3, just mid
Uh,
afternoon. Didn't know what I was setting up on, didn't know anything that I was doing. And I was bored. And I was like, yep, this isn't for me. So that was like, I think 2016. So it wasn't until, 2020 that I really kind of got into it with the way that things were working up here where I am. I live in a touristy area. There's a lot of hiking trails, rock climbing, mountain biking, and everything. And everybody was kind of doing their own thing for a little bit there. So I decided to just go in the woods. I was already foraging for wild mushrooms. So that kind of brought me out into the woods a little bit more. And I realized there was a whole network of trails out there. So started learning a little bit more, learned about the Pittman Roberts Act and how hunters and hunting licenses and sales of everything was kind of really what was going towards conservation. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool. I want to work towards doing that a little bit more. And then built some landowner relations with some farmers. And that first year, I shot my bear over corn, and I just tried to learn as much as I possibly could, whether it be like open stalking through the cornfield once it had been cut down, onto some deer and seeing how the camo worked, learning about wind. Just it went haywire from there. And then last year I shot my first deer with the bow, and I've shot ducks and grouse and everything. And then this past spring I shot my first turkey. So it's been steady uphill progression for the past couple years, which is nice.
Now, I find it interesting that, you went out there for those 2 hours, obviously in the middle of the day, you didn't know what you were doing, but you ultimately you got bored. So, um, I feel like a lot of people at that point would just like write it off. They're like, God, I went one time, it was so boring. Like, what was that decision that made you like want to try it again, I guess?
It was just being out in the woods and recognizing that, living in an area where there's so many man-made trails and
Yeah.
everything that I can go and hike on, that the animals create their own trails out there in general. Like you've got the bear trails that the bears are going to create, which are a little bit wider. You've got the deer trails, which are narrower, and then those even vary depending on like whether I consider them like a highway, or if they're just like a secondary trail that they're going on. And I found that really interesting. So that first year, I hunted from the ground, completely from the ground. And I'm like, all right, let's see how we can do this. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to archery hunt specifically in New England from the ground in the woods. You don't really get get too many good shots. So, I wasn't as successful, but I had the opportunities to be able to just learn their patterns, learn their habits, and I just took a different perspective on it. I took more of a instead of thinking it was going to be easy, right? I just kind of looked at it as like, all right, what can I learn about this animal? How can I learn what these animals are doing, and how can I actually get into their bedrooms and into their kitchens and all this stuff?
So I find it interesting too that you've been hunting for such a short amount of time that you now own or you started a saddle company. So I have to ask you how that came to be so quickly, I guess, or was there like were you out one day and you were like, I wish I would because you have climbing experience. Were you like, I wish I was hoisted up in this tree with a rope, and then you started like looking into it and found out about saddles? Like, how'd you even start dabbling in all that?
So I met a friend who was in the local climbing shop here asking them about ropes and everything. And I had been doing my research about saddle hunting because I'm like, all right, hunting from the ground's not really a feasible option. I had my first hip replacement in 2018, and I was desperately in need of needing my second, my other hip replaced. So I didn't want to carry a tree stand out in the woods. I'm like, all right, I don't want to carry a tree stand and then potentially shoot a deer and then have to drag the deer and the tree stand and the sticks and all that stuff. It just doesn't seem like a viable option. So I've been researching it. YouTube algorithms kind of help out with showing things and, watching a lot of videos on it. And I didn't want to bite the bullet on purchasing a saddle because I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. It's expensive. Um, so this guy was in the store asking about ropes and rock climbing devices to use for saddle hunting. They took his information down, knowing that I was looking at the application of that gear in that field. Talked with him, tried on a couple of the saddles that he had, and he's like, kind of pitched the idea to me. He's like, "Hey, man, you got a lot of knowledge here. You could probably do something in this space and in this industry." And I've always kind of had a knack for design. I studied architecture in college after the service, and I'm like, all right, I don't want to build buildings or build spaces for people. What can I do? And it all just kind of worked out magically. So, last year, while I was basically doing all of my prototype design throughout the all of last year before I launched, this May, with going live. And I shot my doe out of one of my prototype saddles, which was really kind of cool to be able to do. And it's like, okay, this is a viable option. Definitely one of the least comfortable designs that I had at the time, but it was cool to see that progression and recognize that it's like, okay, the military knowledge that I have, the injuries that I have, the mountaineering knowledge and all that stuff is viable in this space.
Yeah, it's you know, you think about pulling a product out of a box, you just like maybe it's just me, but like I just assume it went down some line and got sewed up real quick and then just like ended up in my hands. But like you're hand making these saddles, right? Like you're sewing them and stuff yourself. How long did it take to come up with this design? Because I gotta imagine that you were stitching back and forth for a long time before you kind of got to your final product.
Yeah, so like I said, the whole process took probably about a year of figuring out different aspects of it. I didn't want um, what I where I had seen a different space or room for growth in this market was the idea of comfort, the lightweight, and a little bit more security, or at least potential security. A couple of the saddles that I had tried on, they were single panel saddles. So when I tried them on, in order for me to get them comfortable on my body, I had to have them ride a little bit lower there than where the iliac crest is, or the
Mm,
hip bone. And I didn't like that. That coming from a rock climbing and mountaineering background, and having taken lead climbing falls and punched through a snow bridge into a crevasse, I didn't like the idea of the potential of flipping upside down and coming out of my safety harness essentially.
mhm,
Um, Not saying that that's actually going to happen, but that was where my mindset went. So I tried to approach it from that design of how can I make this comfortable? Again, like having already had one hip replacement and desperately needed another, the hip pinch was kind of bad for me as well. So taking those different aspects of my personal needs into what I think would be a viable option. So I probably went through 5 different design iterations before I landed on the one that I'm on now. And those first 4, or the first 5 all the way through, I did contract out and I had somebody do the sewing for me because I didn't sew anything in my life before I started this. I it wasn't until January or February where I really decided that, like, all right, I'm doing this. I'm going all in. I'm doing it, and I bought an industrial machine and just started learning how to sew. Um, and I am doing, I would say, a good majority of the sewing right now. When I do have good orders, when orders are good, or I do have like trade shows that I have to go to, I do have a local shop here that I contract some of the sewing out to, and then I do all the final stitching, just to kind of ease that process because I'm a one man show.
yeah, yeah. I'm always watching your Instagram stories. And I see you like in the shop. I don't sleep very much at night, so I'm not really sure what time it is. But like, I'll be checking Instagram at nighttime, and there's AJ just like in front of the machine, which is really cool thing to see because you go by. I won't put anybody like on blast or anything, but like you go buy a tree stand at the store, like you don't get to see them putting the bolts and all that stuff in. Like you're very far removed from it. So I think it's cool to be able to watch what could be your next saddle being sewn by the guy that owns a company. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by the process. I mean, even just learning how to make some of these smaller clips for videos. Like, I'm not a video dude at all, but I made one recently where I took a couple of different shots and different angles of the needle of and the walking foot of the needle going up and down. And I'm just fascinated by that. I wish I could figure out how to get a video of what the inside of the machine is doing because I don't know. Machining and manufacturing, I never was really fascinated by it, but with everything that's been going on in the world the way that it is, it kind of I started to become more fascinated by it, and honestly, really inspired by Pete Roberts of Origin and what he's doing and how he's kind of taking over and trying to bring American manufacturing back. And it's like that's something that we need. I want to be a part of that in whatever capacity I can be.
Yeah, that's super cool. Are you pretty happy with your design that's out now, or are you planning on making like changes to your saddle in the future?
I've already made a couple of different small changes,
Mhm.
and I continue. I do. I'm always thinking about different ways that I can improve, taking different feedback from other people. What can I do? Is there a way to take this hybrid panel design and add a way on there to keep the overall feel and the benefits of mine, but still kind of turn it into a 2 panel system at the same time? Just different ways of I don't want to say taking away. I think this is a good base, but adding to. I'm a
Mhm.
real big fan of modularity. I don't think that one thing should do one job unless it's extremely specific. Which is why the waist belt is removable and has molly on it. The saddle has the molly on it. I do plan on making other accessories for it to make things work together in conjunction and offer just different things like a fanny pack for people. So it's like, oh, you want to put all your gear in the back of your saddle and you know where all your stuff is. Cool, it's there. Also, you want to go and track, you've got your fanny pack that you can take with you.
Yeah. I definitely know you're a big fan of that, everything being where you can use it for multiple things, because I was impressed when you were showing me those knots at the mobile expo. You were using it to like using the rope as alignments, and then you're like using it as a tether to tie into your bridge and like all this different stuff. You're just like whipping out these knots. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's when it comes to saddle hunting and just in general, there's different concepts that we look at. Like you think about if you're going to use, we'll just use like the single rope technique as one aspect of things, right? Because it's the easiest in terms of like thinking about knots and different applications of different things. You can have your line that's already preset. You say you got it up, however you got it up there. You've got your line preset, and now you want to ascend that rope. Well, that's the concept. And then how you go about doing that is the technique, whether you're using, say, like a friction hitch, and then you can go down a list of different friction hitches that you can use, or you can use a mechanical device, whether it be an ascender or um, an assisted braking device or a rappelling device, as would be in our case, because we're not actually climbing and taking lead falls, or just a normal like belaying device or rappelling device. And then there's other knots that you need to know for those different applications. And I know that's one of the biggest things that I think is people's apprehension in terms of getting into saddle hunting. I don't think the cost is really a big deterring factor for people. It's the knowledge base of the rope systems and what you can do safely versus unsafely, and safely being kind of like the not the right term there, but more secure, less secure. Everything that I try to show and do is safe, and there is some sort of risk. There is any sort of risk when you're doing anything in an elevated position. So it's just a matter of understanding the concept, and then you can go down the rabbit hole from there.
Yeah, it's when I first learned about saddle hunting and I started looking into it, I was like, damn, that does not look safe. But after playing around with it and hunting out of it and, experiencing it, I actually feel safer in a saddle than I ever have in any other tree stand. I mean, I feel more stable, I feel more secure. For a while, I thought it was because I was butted up against a tree and it like would give you that illusion of like being able to grab the tree, as to when you're normally in a tree stand, you're facing like out if you fall. But no, that wasn't the case. I don't know if I'll ever go back to a tree stand after hunting in a saddle. So I want to dive into 101 saddle hunting. Um, for anybody that hasn't really dabbled in the game or is maybe thinking about getting involved in the game, I just want to kind of prepare them or let them kind of hear what they're getting into as far as price and all that kind of stuff. But do you know any backstory of how saddle hunting came to be? I've heard that it's been around since the 80s or something. I'm sure people were hanging out of vines and stuff years ago, like shooting deer or something. But like, do you know like when an official saddle hit the market or anything like that?
That I don't know. I think it might have been like the 90s, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that people have been using sit drags and modifying those and doing this like, yeah, since the 80s. There's always going to be cowboys in whatever industry or whatever sport there is that's out there, and people just kind of pushing those limits. I
Yeah.
mean, there are still people now who are hunting out of dead trees that I wouldn't touch.
Yeah, you hear a lot of old timers talk about falling on, or like sitting up on a fallen tree that's like leaning. They just climb up it and they're 12 feet in the air. And I don't know. I just imagine somebody was like an arborist, like we talked about earlier, or had their dad's old work harness hanging around. They're like, I'm just gonna hang this from the tree, and next thing you know, we got saddle hunting. Is there pros and cons to saddle hunting? I mean, I know the pros, but we'll have you touch on that. But like, I don't know if there's any cons, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it.
Um, The pros, we can touch on those quickly, right? You're saving weight, you're more mobile. Um, those are, I think, two of the biggest ones right there. More comfortable, added security over a tree stand and the harness system that you're in with those. Um, and just, yeah, the ease of transition from like one spot to the next if the wind shifts on you, like where I'm at in the mountains, the wind will definitely shift on me every now and again. So I could be down the tree and back up the tree in 20 minutes, and still hunt in the same area, just in a better position. Um, as for the cons, I don't have the greatest experience out of hunting out of a tree stand, so it's really
Mm,
um, challenging for me to say that. I would say, just from what I know, it would be people who already have tree stands. They've already got the investment in, multiple stands in their spots or whatever it is. So then thinking about getting into another aspect of it or adding another tool to the toolbox, there's the cost prohibitive aspect of it. That could be a con. And then also, it's not a great bit of knowledge, but I can see that little bit of knowledge base being something that would prevent people from wanting to get into it.
hmm.
People understand how to climb up and down a set of sticks, or they understand how to climb up and down a ladder or use a climber or whatever it might be. And once you bring ropes and knots and, devices into things, a lot of people get intimidated, in the slightest bit.
Yeah, I'll have to say before I knew anything about saddle hunting, that's the thing that intimidated me was knots. Because I had a lot of trouble with I used to use paracord as my tow rope, and I'd get it up there and it'd be like 25 feet long out of a hang on or a climber. It would always get knotted up. So I had this like grudge against knots because they'd get knotted up and then I wouldn't want to use a light when I get down and I'd have all these knots and it wouldn't reach the bottom of the tree. And so when I first looked at saddle hunting, I was like, oh my God, that looks like it's going to be just like a rat nest of knots. But it doesn't, I guess it could get that way, but it's not as complicated as what it looks like. When you're watching it, it looks a little more intimidating than when you actually get in it. But I think the biggest con to it would be like adjustment. There's a lot of adjustment in it. Not that that's like a bad thing, but it's a little harder to adjust it maybe just at first than it is to kind of climb in a stand and just sit down, because you got that adjustment in your bridge and then your back panel if it's like a panel saddle or whatever. But
Yeah, you've got like the tether height, and that height depends on the angle, that dictates the angle of pull, and that's going to differ for everybody. Where you want your bridge to be in terms of the length of that. If you've got, yeah, like you said, if you got a two panel system where you want the back panel to be, even with some of the single panels and the hybrid panel, like with mine, I will find that I get into the tree and I do adjust it like once or twice throughout my sit. And I'm like, okay, yep. And it's because sometimes one part of your butt goes numb and the other part needs to take that
yeah,
relief again. But
yeah,
yeah, it is a little bit more adjustments and just kind of getting used to. But I think that's the benefit. It's also a benefit as well, as you can adjust that comfort versus what you got for the tree stand, what you've got for padding on there is what you got. And if you go up there and you've left it for a week and the mice have chewed through it and you don't have any padding left, well, you're hosed.
yeah, yeah. And something that I always would find myself in a hang on stand is I could almost get them level, but they would always seem like they were just cocked a little bit one way or the other. So you'd hang it prior to season, or you'd go in and hang a set, and you're like, okay, I'm good. And you're like, I got 2 hours left. Like I got to get in the stand now because like the time is now to hunt. Then you get up there and you're like leaning this way the whole time. The thing with the saddle is you can make like an adjustment that's so quiet and takes such minimal effort, and just totally shift your body weight, which I absolutely love.
Yeah,
Um,
like a slight little knot from the tree digging in your back the entire sit.
exactly. um, so I guess if I'm going to pretend that I'm just getting into saddle hunting. Tell me what I need to go to the store, or I guess go online and buy to be able to get myself up in a tree and hunt. We're going to assume that I have a bow and everything, um, but I need to get up in that tree and hang out in that tree so I can kill a deer.
So you want to get into saddle hunting is what you're saying.
I want to get into
Right?
saddle hunting.
What kind of stands are you using right now?
Uh, hang-ons and a summit climber.
Okay, cool. Well, you've already got a platform right there with your climber. You just get
Hmm.
rid of the upper part. If you're using hang-ons, you've got sticks as well, so there's another means of getting up there. So you've already got some of the gear. You're already on your way. All you got to get is either a full length, 20, 30-foot rope, whatever hunting height you like to be at, add a little bit of extra feet for knots. And you don't even have to do that. I prefer rappelling, just for something I can get into in a minute. You need a tether, and you'll need either some sort of friction hitch or rappelling device or ascending device to connect into either that tether and that rappelling rope. And if you want to use a lineman's belt, you can use a lineman's belt. I know some people do and don't. It's good if you're using climbing sticks to kind of hold your position in place, hold your body in place so you don't kind of fall back when you're adjusting and moving things around. So and then there's obviously the saddle. So you're not looking at an extreme investment in getting into it. There's a whole range of products that are out there from even in saddles you can go with something that's on the less expensive side, and I think I've seen them as cheap as like 100 and something bucks,
Oh,
$150
wow.
something on Instagram. And then you can go all the way like Kush expensive. And I've seen some that were running, into I think maybe that 300, a little over $300 range, and everything in between, you know. And it really depends on what you're looking for in terms of the style that you're going to be sitting in. And not every saddle is going to fit everybody the same. And that's the unfortunate thing with the the industry with where it's at now. We don't have all of the saddles in all the stores, so people can't try them on.
Yeah.
In order to really understand what you want, you've got to go to an event. You've got to go to a try before you buy event or whatever it might be. Um, or you can go with the biggest, most marketed saddles that are out there, and then try those out, find out if they're comfortable for you or not, and move on to something else. It really depends on the way that people on how you want to go. But I would say the biggest expenses in getting into saddle hunting are going to be the saddle itself and then the platform. The ropes and the carabiners and all those things, they can get expensive if you want them to be. If you're going to be looking at like the lightest of the light, which is what I do, um, yeah, they get to be pricey. I've got one carabiner I think that cost in the 20, 24, $25 range, maybe even a little bit more just for one carabiner because it's lighter. Everybody need that? No, but I was doing that and I still do that for my job. So I want to carry as little metal that weighs a lot as possible when I'm climbing on the rocks.
Now, is there any way to look at? Let's pretend we have four saddles up on the screen, A, B, C, and D. I guess. Is there any way to look at those and be like, I think that one's going to fit my body because I'm skinny, or that one's going to fit my body better because I'm fat, or is it like you have to almost try it on to see what's going to work?
Um, That's a really challenging question to answer, especially being that I do manufacture saddles, and I have kind of a different design than the others. I want to say that mine's going to be the most comfortable for everybody, but I know that's not necessarily the case. I think that you have single panel, you've got double panel, you've got pleated, and then you have what I'm calling mine, which is like that hybrid panel where you have the panel that you're sitting on, and then you have that the lumbar belt and the waist belt that goes, at and above the hip bone there. Um,
Hmm.
and what I have found in my little bit of trying them on is the double panel and mine, the hybrid panel, are for me the two most comfortable. And that double panel is because you've got that back support that you can lean on. Um, what I don't like about it is the angle that it puts on your hips when you're leaning in it. For me, again, I also have two hip replacements. I know not everybody has that, and I've got some other residual injuries from the service. So what works well for me doesn't necessarily work well for everybody. So I would say that um, one of the things that you could do is look on, YouTube. I know it's a great resource nowadays, and there are so many people in the space now that are doing reviews, that are sitting and trying these things out for extended periods of time, and how they feel and what they feel. So find a YouTuber that's doing that, who fits your body type, and see what they're saying about that saddle.
Yeah, that's a pretty smart idea, is to find a YouTuber that's your body type, to find it, because you're going to be close at that point. If you find somebody that's like 50 pounds off of you, I've got to assume that it's going to fit completely different than, yourself. Um, what about sticks? Um, are you opinionated on certain sticks, or like what's your kind of thoughts around when you buy sticks, what to look for? I know there's a zillion options out there.
Yeah, I'm not opinionated. I think that's like a price point item. Is one of the ways that I would look at it. Like, I still don't own a set of climbing sticks. I'm using a different method to climb this year. So I still have one of my buddy's one sticks, that he let me borrow to try out. And last year all I used was the the seat portion of my Lone Wolf hand climber. So I had my platform, and that was kind of how I was climbing. Was
Hmm.
essentially just moving my tether up for my saddle, and then moving and standing up, and just kind of inchworming up like I would a normal climber. Um, which is why I said prior, if you have a climber, you've already got half of what you need there. You've already got the platform part. Um, but I think that there are some sticks out there. One of the things that I would say that I would look for would be, a cam cleat option on there. If they have a cam cleat option, or if it's something that you can add on to without too much altering of the stick itself. If they've already got two holes drilled where you can just, quick and easy, take off the attachment methods that's on there and put that on without having to drill through the aluminum or the steel or whatever it is. That would be a big thing. And that's just if you wanted to also move into like one sticking, because that just makes it a little bit easier. And then just adding a couple of other modifications to them as well. Again, for me, weight is a big thing. So I would try to find something that's lighter weight. But if you're first getting into it, like, you're saving so much weight just getting into saddle hunting from a tree stand, that it's now we're just counting ounces, and that's
Yeah.
where I like to nerd out. Um, another thing that I would do before I buy any product is, like, look if the company's had recalls on their products, before you go ahead and make that investment, and check to see if they fixed those recalls or those issues that they had.
Now, can you cover kind of what one sticking is? Because I think most people are used to putting, two, three, four sticks on a tree and then like hopping on your platform, whatever. But like, what is one sticking? Is there a good way to kind of describe that for people that aren't watching on YouTube?
Yeah, so one sticking would be having a single climbing stick, usually a two-step climbing stick, whatever your length of your desired length is. I think a lot of people are using like the 20-inch steps now, and then having anywhere from a 1 to 3 step aider attached to the bottom step. And I think that 2 steps is kind of that sweet number that a lot of people are looking at, and that can either be like a nylon webbing aider, or it can be an am steel aider. Again, saving that weight and everything. I think that the webbing aiders are a little bit more comfortable underfoot personally than the am steel aiders. But yeah, it's teach their own on that. So what you end up doing is you will use your lineman belt. You'll place your stick as high as you can, so you can still comfortably get your bottom foot, or get your foot into the bottom aider. Throw your lineman belt on around the tree, and then climb up that stick like you normally would, your first climbing stick, except it'll be, that much higher than your initial stick. Then you will connect your tether onto the tree once you get to the top step. Hook into your tether on your bridge line, hang from that, reach down and grab that stick and undo it, which is why the cam cleat is so handy, because you can just pull the rope right out, and then you'll reset it up above you again, so you can get your foot into that bottom step. You'll then put the lineman belt back on, undo the tether, and continue to climb up. There are other ways of doing it. I don't like undoing my tether. When I do one stick, I like just kind of putting my stick below where my tether is and then shimmying that up. Again, it's the safety aspect of things or the security aspect of things. If I'm going to fall with a lineman belt on, there's still a potential for me to fall all the way to the ground, except I'd just be turning myself into a cheese grater against my sticks. With that tether attached, the motion of me falling, even if I have it loose, that motion of me falling backwards away from the tree is going to tighten down that girth hitch that's on there. And then I'm going to fall. Yes, I'm going to fall, but I'm not going to fall all the way down to the ground. And that's important if I'm making my last or final move, you know?
Now, what's kind of the difference in time in one sticking compared to putting up a full set of sticks? Do you think that it can, with practice, be comparable in setup time? Because to me, I've never one stick, but to me, it just sounds like, for one, it intimidates me because I hunt a lot in September when it's hot and sweaty and it's already miserable, and like it just seems like a lot of extra work. But I'm also carrying a lot more weight in. But I am curious on the difference in setup time because I feel like it would take longer to one stick.
Um, yeah, I would say overall, from what I've seen, it does take a little bit longer. However, you can be, I don't want to say it's not the up that's the big thing. It's the coming down. So most people who are one sticking are also rappelling all the way down. So
Mm,
once you get up, so say you and I were out there and we're both proficient at our perspective thing. So I'm proficient at one sticking, you're proficient at multiple sticking. Say we go out and then all of a sudden we've got, we go out with a northwest wind coming in, and then we're set up in a perfect location to hit this trail that we know that we've seen them coming in. We've had the cameras, we know this is how they're walking in. Well, all of a sudden the wind shifts on us to say a northeast wind, and now our scent's getting blown directly into that trail. Um, I'm going to be down and set over on the other side of that trail much quicker than you are, because
hmm.
you have to climb down, take all of your sticks. You're going to be making a lot more noise doing that as well. And if it's at that time where we've got, say, a half an hour before we know that they're coming in, I'm going to beat you to that punch.
Hey guys, we've recently partnered with the social media platform Go Wild to combat mainstream social media censorship. If you're tired of having your hunting and outdoor posts taken down and flagged, be sure to check out Go Wild, which was built by outdoorsmen and women just like you. Go Wild is a free social community. Not only are your photos not censored, but they are also encouraged on Go Wild. Go Wild gives you points for things like sharing your trophies, gear reviews, and inviting friends. As you earn more points, you unlock awesome rewards such as gift cards, free swag, knives, and huge discounts on brands like Garmin and Vortex. Oh, and if you create a free account, you can unlock $10 just for trying it out. Use code HTW to receive 10% off your order today. Download Go Wild at gowild.com or in the App Store. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess if you're already getting into saddle hunting, your whole purpose is to kind of be mobile. So that makes a lot of sense. Is, you know, if there's a place to suck up more time, it would be like in the four sticks. So you might as well go the whole way if you're trying to be quick and silent and mobile about everything. So yeah, I guess I don't know. Maybe I need to look into one sticking. I imagine it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, definitely. And a good transition for you is, like, how many sticks are you bringing out right now?
Four of the 20s.
Okay, you could probably cut that down just by getting an aider,
Mm-hmm.
or two for some of the sticks, and then you could be bringing two of the sticks out, you know, and that's shaving a little bit of weight. And two sticking is also a way that people are doing it. I know people who are two sticking, who are three sticking. If you've got one stick with a two-step aider on it, that can be your first stick. And then you've got another one, you've got two more, right, with a single step aider. You're still getting up to that hunting height. And then what's nice is, say you are going to leave that spot, you pull your first stick down, you've got those other two left up there. Nobody else is going to be able to get up there if it's you're already two sticks higher than where most people are going to go.
Right. Yeah. The aiders is something that I don't have. It's my first year saddle hunting, but it's definitely something that I want to look into. let's cover kind of aiders a little bit. Is there brands that are better? I mean, I can't imagine that it matters a whole lot because like you're standing on it for 1 or 2 seconds. So to me, like comfort's not a thing. Like even if I'm stepping on a piece of glass, like I can handle it for 1 second, So, um, but I would be interested in what you think, like, to look for in an aider, because I'm sure that there's certain things that are better.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people right now in the saddle hunting world are using like Amsteel aiders. So that can be purchased through any of the Amsteel manufacturers that are out there. People have their own individual choice of who they want to go through. And I won't push people to one person or another on that side. Coming from the climbing world, you have two different styles of aiders. Essentially, you have a ladder aider, which is what a lot of people are using, making the Amsteel, where it just looks like you've got the vertical ropes on the outside, and then you have the steps on the inside. And then there's I don't even know what to call it. It's kind of like it looks almost like a Christmas tree aider, where you have the vertical webbing is running on the inside, and then you have the steps on the outside, and they're offset. So
Huh.
you'd have one step on the left, and then halfway up, say a foot or two, foot and a half up, you'd have the step on the left. I prefer the ladder aiders. For what I'm going to be using this year, there's a climbing company called Matulius, and they make a pocket aider. So it folds up and it's got a little stuff sack that it folds up to. And that's what I'm going to be using to climb with as well. And I'm going to be using that on its own separate tether. So I'm not using an aider that's attached to a stick. I'm going to be using just a straight, 4-step ladder aider on its own tether, and then my bridge line tethered onto a tree. Again, I like to go light.
Yeah, that's so you're basically gonna take the aider and put its own like lifeline to it to hold it onto the tree and then slide it up as you go.
Yep.
That's interesting. I like that idea. So let's talk about platforms a little bit. What are you using as far as like a platform goes, and what do you kind of look for in that? Because I know there's like anything else, there's a zillion options out there. There's metal ones, plastic ones, wide ones, skinny ones, heavy ones, light ones. Um, how does somebody know what to buy? And we've talked about this already too. They're not in big box stores, so they can't kind of check them out or compare them to their foot size. So how do we decide what we need?
Right. Yeah. So what I've been finding, I'm going to use a combination of things this year. I'm still going to be using that hand platform of the Lone Wolf Climber, because it's got a little bit more real estate for me to stand on.
Hmm.
But my predominant platform that I'm going to use, I'm definitely going to plug these guys, is the Pursuit platform. They just released this year as well, and I'm going to use that because it's like just over a pound or just under a pound. It's around that weight. It doesn't have a whole lot of real estate, but that's okay. It's enough for me, and I've used it a couple of times already this season out bear hunting, and it's awesome. One of the things that I would say that I would really look for in terms of a platform, and the Lone Wolf hand climber portion, or even just the climber, any climber platform doesn't have this, is a secure attachment to the tree, right? Those things can kick out, especially if you're pressing around and you're trying to get a shot around the backside of the tree. So I'm going to end up probably tying off the bottom just to
Hmm.
keep it a little bit more secure once I get up there, and that'll be a little bit nicer. I won't have my platform drop out on me again, like I did last year.
Uh oh.
um, yeah, I really like. I'm not gonna lie. I like the looks of the Latitude X-wing, and that's just an aesthetic thing for me. It's got certain things there, but again, you're kind of cutting out a big portion of where you can put your feet. I'm ADD, and I need to move around, which is not ideal for for deer hunting in general. So I like to move around and shift. Again, I've got body issues, so I've got to constantly adjust and tweak what I'm doing all the time, um, which is why I like a little bit more real estate. But again, I think that it's as long as it's secure to the tree and you're comfortable with it, having something that's got grip on the outside of it too, to allow you to kind of press around the side of the tree is nice. And I've seen people who are using these smaller platforms and doing like a ring of steps. I know you had Bowlman Outdoors on recently, and getting a couple of his steps to kind of use as like motorcycle stirrups and
Mm-hmm.
be able to press all the way around the tree is awesome too. I know there are people who just use a ring of steps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm using this year is as pursuit platform. You know, I'm a guy that likes to have a lot of room in my stand, but when I started jumping in this saddle game, I'm like, by the time I get all this room on this platform and everything, like, is it even worth it? Like, I might as well just take my climber if I'm adding all this extra weight. So I was like, I'm pretty sure pursuit's right at 1 pound. Um, I was like, I'm going as light as I can get, and it's small, but it's enough to kind of you still have plenty of room. And I did go with the Bullman, extra 2 steps on the side so you can kind of kick out like you're on a Harley or whatever it is. But um, with those, you have plenty of room. There's no issues. Now I could see if you were like a guy that was like, I don't know, I'm pretty short guy, I only weigh 150 pounds. So I could see if you're a bigger guy and you wore like a size 12 or 13 foot, like your boots might be an issue on a smaller platform. But to me, the trade off between weight, I'm definitely going to try to, I'm sticking with that because it's light.
Yeah, and even, at the price point that they're at right now for their platform, just get two of them and run them together.
Yeah. I love the way that those things lock in, man. A big fan. I'm not sure what that buckle is called, but
Oh, the cam over, I think it's like the cam over buckle or something like that.
I'm so used to pulling stuff tight and locking it in and like it just locks over. If you pull that thing tight and try to lock it over, you almost have to let a little bit of slack out. And that thing, I actually made a YouTube video of me trying to break it off the tree, and I jumped as hard as I could and I could not get it to come loose. So those
Yeah,
things, shout out to those guys because they're stable on the tree.
it's definitely like anything. I was having a pain trying to deal with it the first couple of times, and
Uh huh.
I even had the buckle slide off the strap, and I'm like, wait a second, how do I do this again? What did I do? It took me some time, but you know, I had that happen before the season started. So it's
Yeah.
taking that time ahead of the season and actually practicing and getting familiar with it. Now I'm beginning to recognize it's like, okay, that's how much tension I need to have on it before I cam it over. Oh, okay, cool. This is great.
Okay. So I guess we want to talk a little bit about comfort. And I know that we covered this a little bit, but what's the main thing to look for, like for comfort? I guess it's just that multi-panel kind of thing. Is that what's keeping most people comfortable in the tree when it comes to
Ooh,
like the actual adjustment or whatever in the saddle? Because I guess I don't really sure how to word it, but like I think a lot of people are like, at least me, I thought that I was going to be pinched up and confined in a saddle, and I don't feel that way in the one that I use now. I use a Buzzard Roost saddle, um,
oh,
but
that's
I
a good
do,
battle too.
I feel like a lot of people worry about that because when I don't know if you've ever wore a traditional like tree stand harness that you would use out of a, but man, it just like pinches your legs and all that stuff. And that was something that I worried about. But what can somebody mainly look for when they're shopping online? They could say, this one has this one doesn't have this. Like, what's going to be the most comfortable?
Yeah, that getting back to that most comfortable question is always going to be a challenge. So I would say, something that is going to provide that support in the major area that you're sitting on, right? And we predominantly sit on our butts. So, and with that, you're going to be looking more honestly, honestly at a two panel or like a hybrid panel system. I think that the single panel design, and this is just my own personal thought, I think that they try to bridge the gap to cover down from your waist to your butt and provide a good benefit. But it's predominantly, I would say, a leaning saddle. That's great for leaning, but if you want to sit at all, you want something that covers down on that butt. And with a two panel system, you can adjust that bottom panel to go a little bit lower on the butt towards the upper part of the legs, and it's just like you're sitting in a chair.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with that hybrid panel. If you want to lean, you can adjust it a little bit higher. If you want to sit, you can pull it down a little bit lower onto the legs. Um, Something that's got a good wrap around, and this is going to be more on the sizing side of things. So if you're a little bit wider hips, you want it to you want that panel to wrap all the way around your hips before those bridge lines come out. And then another adjustment that I just added in onto mine after some user feedback is I would say the pitch adjustment on the bridge line attachment itself to the saddle. So being able to adjust where on that bridge or where on the saddle the bridge line is going to be pulling from, whether it's the top or
Mm,
bottom instead of just from the center. From when I first built mine, I had it tied off on one side and it would just pull right at the apex of that. And the same thing with the prusik knot adjustment, it would just pull from the apex there. Um, and then the other thing too is, some people like depleting a lot of material. I found again that like you don't have to have a lot of material to be comfortable. In fact, more material, if it's not added in a strategic way or if it's not added in an appropriate way, can add some pressure points and can kind of push and prod in areas that we don't really like to be pushed and prodded in.
mhm. Okay. Uh, I guess this just kind of popped in my head. We can go in as depth or touch on it as lightly as we can, but males and females are probably going to sit a lot different in a saddle. You think I mean, is that something that you can see in the future? Is like one being specifically made for females versus males, or no? You see that being an issue?
Maybe for other manufacturers, I have been able to navigate around that. I don't believe that I've had too many female customers at this point in time. But the one that I did have, I know we tried on a small saddle with a small waist belt, and that didn't work. We tried on a medium saddle that fit her perfectly, but the medium waist belt she just had too much tail. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have, but we could have, or is it the backwards? No, no, definitely right. We adjusted that by pulling the medium waist belt out and putting a small waist belt in there. She's
Mm,
a tiny framed individual.
yeah.
And that made the most sense for me to then say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to sell them. You have two different measurements that you have. You've got your waist measurement, which is at like that more narrow point right above the hip bone, and then you've got the saddle measurement, which is at the widest point, so directly around your butt. And that determines for the customer which one they want, if it's a medium large, whatever it might be, whatever combination.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I came to that Mobile Hunters Expo and tried a bunch of those saddles on, because for months and months and months I was looking at saddles online, and like after a while they just like it's like just buy one, like you just get to the point where you just like don't know. So you're just gonna like buy one to try out. So anybody that's looking to do that, I would highly, highly, highly recommend sitting in one, because your buddy might have one and say it's the most comfortable thing in the world, and you might sit in it and decide that you like saddle A instead of the one he has. Everybody's different. I mean, there's probably no real answer to the equation, I guess.
And there are so many of them out there that are comfortable too. I definitely want to plug mine, but I definitely know that there are others that are out there that are comfortable as well. I've sat in them, I've tried them out, and they feel great.
Um, sitting in a saddle at first, and maybe not so much trying it out at like an expo where you're only a couple feet off the ground, but like it takes some getting used to kind of put your trust into being hung off the side of a tree. What would you kind of recommend for people? They just got a saddle, they just bought one, they bought all the stuff they need, like they've got it. How much practice or whatever do you think that they need, or time to spend in that saddle to really get comfortable? Because you don't want to go hunting and then have a deer there and be like, I'm too scared to move 4 inches to the right. I'm scared I might fall out of it. Like, is, practice every day after work, like sit in it a couple times and you're good? Where's kind of the timeline on that?
I mean, I think that's going to depend on the individual. I would say, practice as much as you can, as often as you can. For people who are intimidated about starting, start low. Put your platform a few inches above the ground. That way, if the system doesn't work, you're not far above the ground.
Hmm.
And then just keep practicing. Whatever time that you put in, it's like anything, right? Input dictates output. whatever we put into anything is going to determine what we do for our output as well. So the more time that you're able to put into it, the more comfortable that you're going to be, the more proficient that you're going to be, um, the more that you're going to trust that system. I would say that first time that you get set up, though, if you can dedicate, 2 hours to figuring it out, right? You've just gotten all your stuff in there. We all like opening the products, but most of the time, I know for me, like I open my product, I open my package, and then I'm not going to use it right then, so it gets thrown away to the side. So
Mm-hmm.
grab everything, give yourself 2 hours to kind of sit down, go outside, get to a tree, and figure out how it's all going to work that first time. After that, you can break it down with whatever you have. If you've got a family and you work a full time job and you've only got a half an hour to yourself to whatever scroll Instagram or anything like that. Well, take 10 of those minutes, set up your saddle, and take the other 20 minutes and scroll Instagram from your saddle.
Yeah, that I think, practice is like anything else. It's like a climber. The first time you take a climber out, you don't want to take it out the first time in the middle of the night and try to set it up. You're going to be hating yourself. Same thing with a saddle. It's like riding a bicycle. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been doing the climbing stuff now for quite a number of years, and even with the saddle hunting and transitioning, I still, I'm always tinkering, so I'm still screwing things up. I'm still forgetting things.
Yeah. So you're in New Hampshire, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I was talking to you a little bit the other day. We had actually had a podcast scheduled and I was at the dentist and got called over. So we had to reschedule. So AJ went bear hunting. And his buddy ended up shooting your buddy shot a bear, right?
Yep. Yeah, he ended up shooting I think she was 200 pounds dressed, 200-pound sow dressed.
Yeah. So I'm in Southern Indiana, about 20, 30 minutes from Illinois, 10, 15 minutes from Kentucky. But bears aren't really a thing here. So I find that super fascinating that you just like have bears running around up there. But is bear hunting like a pretty big part of hunting culture up there, or is it a pretty niche group?
Um, I think it's a niche group, and I only say that based on the numbers that we have in terms of bear density, specifically in my region of New Hampshire. So I don't remember the exact numbers. I was looking at it recently, and we're for habitat capacity that we can handle, or that we'd like to see, that the biologists would like to see. It would be somewhere around like 0.64 bears per square mile, and we're at like 1.43 bears per square mile. So we're
Wow.
almost double the population right now, or maybe a little bit more. I can't remember again exactly. Um, and I think that's in part because of a couple of things. I think people talk about bear meat not being good. I think they're worried a little bit about trichinosis. Well, pork also carries trichinosis.
Hmm.
And I would argue to say that you're more likely to get trichinosis from a mass farmed pig farm than you are a wild pork or wild bear. But also just cook it. There's different ways to do it. It is a little bit greasier, but grease is flavor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
We talked a little bit, when we canceled that show or whatever, rescheduled. I fell asleep or somebody fell asleep somewhere along the way, like we were messaging for like a day or so. But I do like, can you tell the story of how that bear hunt went? Were you in a saddle when your buddy shot that? Were you like next to him or are you further away from him?
I was in a different cornfield, so I had met up with him. We were gonna hunt together. We were gonna kind of set up, on the same cornfield together. But we got down there. There was already a truck down there, and I'm like, I don't know. The field's not it's not small, but it's not very big. It's not like a 200 or 300 acre cornfield like you'll see in some of the Midwestern states, right?
Hmm.
So I'm like, hey, I think I'm just gonna go and check this other field. We'll spread our efforts over a couple of different fields for this farmer, because we're trying to help one farmer out with their corn that they grow for their cattle. So we're trying to just help out with the population or the damage that they're doing there. So we had went out the night before and scouted, found a good spot that we had seen a decent amount of damage being done there. I'm like, hey, that's going to be a good tree for you right there. Why don't you go and set up there? He's like, oh, really? You think? I'm like, yeah, dude, just go there. It'll be great. Um, and what led me to that was I saw the trail going into the wood line over a big log. There was a fresh husk right there. I'm like, yeah, like they're coming into and out of here. Like you're going to be great here. So I met up with him, had a slice of pizza because he was nice enough to get a couple slices of pizza. I borrowed his aider because mine hadn't come in yet. So grabbed that and then went off to a different field. And I went and got set up in a really mangy tree. I don't know if you know this, but at least up here around cornfields, the trees aren't necessarily the best for hunting out of. they're
Oh,
they're a little challenging to maneuver, especially not having permission to cut away any of the branches or anything like that. Trying to find something where you can get a decent shot. So I set up in a tree, was hanging out, didn't see anything, and then 10 minutes before legal was over, I get a text. I shot one. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll be right there. So drop down, and then as I'm leaving the cornfield, I bump a bear into the wood line. I like hear him just take off and scatter into the wood line. I'm like, okay, cool. It's good to know that there's one here too. Um, Meet up with him, and we searched for a good 2 hours. And by the time I got there, it was already fully dark, so we couldn't really have him go up into a saddle again and point out where he had seen it.
oh.
So we searched for 2 hours, didn't find anything. Thankfully, the temps had dropped into the low 40s overnight, and he went down first thing in the morning with a buddy, and within 5 minutes of being out there, he had found it. We were walking circles around where the bear died.
That's always the luck, it seems like, or anything like for me and deer, it's like I'll get close and then come back the next day and it's like, why didn't I look there? Yeah, that's cool. 40 degrees, I guess that's plenty to keep a bear cool.
It's good enough. You definitely have to do that work right away to get the hide off of it. Get some ice in the cavity after you gut it, and get the hide off and just start breaking it down. But that's for me. That's any sort of game meat. Especially in the warmer daytime temps. I really like to get it as cool as possible as quickly as I possibly can. I'm not one that's going to like hang my deer for a week on end with the hide still on it.
Yeah. I actually do hang my deer. I'll hang my deer for up to a week, but I am very specific on like it being very cold, like 10 degrees outside.
With the
But
hide still on it or
yeah,
broken?
with the hide still on it, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
um, but definitely like if it's not, I don't know, like 30 degrees, like it has to be below freezing for me to want to do that because I'm definitely not risking anything. And in Kentucky and Indiana, even in the early season, it's 90 degrees when you first shoot one. So you can pretty much plan on going straight home and quartering it up and getting it in a cooler or taking it to a meat locker because it doesn't take long for flies to kind of get after that. So any big hunting plans or big plans for Huntlyte in 2022?
So
I
big,
guess the remainder of 2022, we're halfway through, but
yeah, big hunting plans is kind of just dedicating more time to bear before archery opens up for deer here. That's the 15th of September is when archery opens up. So
okay.
a few more days. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to take my bow out for a couple more days before I just break down and bring the rifle out. But I kind of just want to shoot a bear. I had a couple close encounters already this season with the bow, but didn't get a chance to get anything off. Where it's like if I had a rifle, it would have been done. So just dedicating the time into the hunting seasons as much as I can, and trying to grow the business. I've got another event definitely scheduled at the end of this month at Sig Sauer here, the firearms manufacturer. They're running a event. I think they're calling it the Whitetail Warriors event or something like that. I don't know if
Hmm.
I'm supposed to be saying that or not, but I wasn't told I couldn't. So hey, yeah. So I'm going to be boothing down there and running a little seminar on saddle hunting. Um,
Cool.
and that's just to kind of get people ready for the muzzleloader and rifle season. And then I think I'm planning that's 2023 though, but yeah, it's really just kind of getting my foot, getting my feet underneath me, making sure that I'm doing things right. I don't think much of the real growth for the business side of things is going to happen until next year or the following year. But the midterm plans for that is to be able to have kind of a small factory slash store frontage, brick and mortar place where people can come in, buy the stuff, but it also acts as the factory as well, and be able to put a couple of people to work, and bring some of that manufacturing back to an area that it had. I'd like to work with a local community college and potentially the prison system up here as well,
Hmm.
to work on getting people transitioned out of institutional life and into a good career field, and give them a skill. That's kind of where I'm at in terms of the vision for the company.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's super cool. I love the idea of being able to go into a shop and try one out because that's really not a thing right now.
Yeah, it would be cool, more than anything, the idea of having people be able to come in and see where it's getting made, see how that process works, and then trying it on. I don't know how much other product I'll carry in terms of other aspects of things, but that's, right now it's a pipe dream. We'll see if we can make it happen.
Oh, I know you can make it happen. You can make it happen. Um, so I like to ask people. My audience finds this to be very interesting, so it's something that I've started doing. Um, you have any crazy or wild hunting stories, or since you're a mountain guide, I can imagine you've seen plenty of stuff. So hit me with your best, craziest, wildest. I don't know. You said you fell down a crevasse or something one time. Like, hit me with something good.
All right. Yeah, I'll tell that story. I know it's not a hunting story, but it's a mountain climbing story. So, I was guiding two clients on the North Ridge of Mount Baker, which is a technical ice climbing route up Mount Baker in Washington State. And I had realized that you could download Amazon Prime videos onto your phone. So the night prior to us actually going up and climbing, I was binge watching a show, and I didn't get to bed until about, I don't know, 2 o'clock, and it was a 4 o'clock wake up to begin the climb, before the snow started kind of getting warm and changing and everything. And there was some snow overnight up high, so we were on the lower part of the mountain crevasse, navigating through the glacier, and I was trying to pick a good route through, and I thought I had a good route through, but the snow bridge was a little too thin where I had stepped, and I punched in up to my waist with both of my feet. Both clients, thankfully, were trained and dialed, and they dropped down into the self arrest position. And you know, I didn't. My backpack is really what stopped me from going in, but went into a crevasse waist deep, and then later on in that, the conditions just were treacherous, with the snow that had come in overnight, and my lack of sleep and the warm weather. It was just kind of like mashed potatoes was the consistency of the snow. So after we
Mm.
got through the technical vertical climbing aspect of the head wall on Mount Baker, up onto the upper ridge, it was just like literally every step that I took was like growing from the snow. So I constantly had to keep kicking, hitting my snow with my ice axe to get everything off. And it was a ridiculously fun and interesting and challenging trip because I did not sleep.
Now, if you weren't tied off when you fell into that, right? Or were you?
No, I was tied onto a rope. We had a rope tied from me to somebody in the middle and then to somebody on the end. So
Okay.
we're constantly, yeah, when we're on a glacier, we're constantly tied into multiple people. Whether it's just you and a partner or you and multiple partners, you're tied in. Usually a team is 3 or 4 people. So you've got people, and that's where the self arrest comes in. They take their ice axe and they jam it into the snow and they lay on top of it and they kick their feet in, and that's what catches you and prevents you from falling all the way in. And then the rest
Now,
comes
any
in.
idea? I mean, did you walk up to that thing and like slide up to that thing and look down in it? Like after you got out, like how deep Was
Oh,
it? Would you?
I couldn't see the bottom.
Yeah, so you
You
wouldn't
know,
have stood a chance.
no, and this was like right as the sun was beginning to rise, so it's not like I could see in there anyway.
Yeah,
But it's funny because I was all I had to do was just move like 3 feet over, and the snow bridge was fine. And that's the interesting thing about glaciers and mountains is it's it's constantly keeping you on your toes, much like
unforgiving, unforgiving for sure, man. That's. I bet your heart was racing when that happened.
oh yeah, I that woke me up for a little bit.
All right. Well, I'll ask you this last question, and then we'll kind of end it up here. But this might be hard for you to answer. I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say. What's more fulfilling to you, hunting or climbing?
Hunting is 100%.
Really?
Climbing has its own like personal pursuits that it does, and it puts me into a good space. But hunting overall is more fulfilling because it brings things full circle for me personally. Like I've got this weird, unique connection where I've been in combat, I've seen life taken, I've participated in the taking of life, and now I'm doing that, but in a totally different way. And I am able to appreciate the animal. I know where my food's coming from. I can share that food with people in my community, and I can do the best that I can. I'm not a trophy hunter by any means, but I can do the best that I can to kind of pay respect to the animal. Like I have my turkey pelt, like the entire pelt. I have that pinned up to the wall because I tanned a turkey hide. Who does that?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I'm always trying to save everything. Like I know a lot of people are just like care about antlers, everybody do their own thing, but like I'm with you on that. Like I've boiled a doe skull before just to give to my buddy so he could put it. I mean, nobody is cleaning and bleaching doe skulls. Like
I mean, you saw my booth at the Mobile Hunter Expo. I had my doe skull there just to prove that I'm a little bit valid in the hunting side of things. It's like, look, I've killed things too.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here, AJ. I want to give you the chance, I guess. We've got it scrolling at the bottom of the screen with your website and Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff. But everybody on Apple, Spotify, Google, all that stuff, they're not watching. So tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find information on your saddles, where they can purchase it, and where they can reach out to you, and maybe they have questions about the saddle, or they want to talk to the guy who started Huntlyte.
Yeah, absolutely. So Facebook and Instagram, it's Huntlyte, and that's Huntlyte. And the website is Huntlyte, same spelling, Huntlyte.com. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm not super active right now. I've just got to get more marketing. I've got to spend more time on there is really all it is. Um, and the Instagram typically links to the Facebook. You can message me directly there on the Instagram. And then you can shoot us an info or an email at info@huntlyte.com. And I'll be the one that responds.
Cool. Well, AJ, again, I appreciate you coming on. I think we didn't even touch base on some of the stuff that you can offer. A lot of that mountain climbing stuff and the knots and everything. It's pretty hard to get in depth with learning how to tie knots and stuff on a podcast, but you definitely have the knowledge. And I have to say, I was super impressed when I met you. You're like whipping out these knots and like tying these knots. And I was like, my God, like, how does he know how to, he knows when to turn it and like how to make the rope straight and all this stuff. Um, so anybody ever goes to a show and AJ's there, Huntlyte's there, you guys better go because he's the man of knots. It's cool stuff, man. I wish I knew all those knots. I probably need to learn them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, Adam. This has been awesome. A good resource for you and for everybody else that wants to learn knots is animatedknots.com.
Mm,
I think that's a great place to go and review it, and they do it in just like a picture by picture thing, and you can run through all of it at the same time, or you can go back to a single step. That's a great place to go for people who are, especially knowing that that's a challenging thing for people getting into saddle hunting is the knot aspect of it. So animatedknots.com is a great resource. And The climbing one is probably one that's a little bit is pretty practical, but they have some arborists. They have it broken down by different categories, which is really
Huh.
cool.
Yeah,
So,
that's super cool. I feel like there's not enough hunters out there, even if you're not a saddle hunter. That I mean, I'm definitely guilty of it. That don't know enough knots, and maybe you don't need it if you're hunting a cornfield and you're only hunting 400 yards in the woods. But like if you're going out in big woods and you're spending like a lot of time out there, I could, you might fall off a cliff or something and need some kind of knot to make it happen. So it's definitely something that I need to invest some time in and learn. But thanks guys for tuning in, and thanks again AJ, and we'll let you get out of here, and hope you guys enjoyed this show, and I hope you guys learned a little bit about saddle hunting if you're looking to get involved, and I'm sure AJ would be more than happy to answer any questions you have. So thanks, man.
yeah, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see ya.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. If you enjoyed the show and it's brought you some sort of value, I'd love if you could give me a rating and a review. Just a few seconds of your time can help me better understand the type of content you all enjoy, and it would mean the world to me to hear from all of you.